Hello, Hamish here from mortgagesonline.co.nz. I have got Miriam Bell with me today, senior journalist, business journalist from stuff.co.nz,
Hi, Hamish.
one of my favourite newspapers.
Of course.
You write a lot about property, don't you?
I do. That's my focus.
This graph, we're going to try and pick the bottom of the market, are we?
Well, I think we'd be brave to try and do that. I think that while most people agree that prices are falling and that they may well do so a bit more, most people or economists are very reluctant to pick how far or to what extent that might happen or to when it will stop happening.
Yeah,
But-
because it is a tough one, but it's a question that comes up a lot.
I bet it does. And I guess it's just too hard to tell. But having said that, in the graph you can see how much prices have fallen since the market peak, which is sort of considered to be late last year, basically, although it does vary around the country. And as you can see on that graph, which is from the Real Estate Institute's latest house price index, nationally they've fallen by 7.7% since the peak. So it's significant.
And it feels like Auckland and the big centres have been hit harder than the smaller centres in a way.
I think so at this stage, but they saw bigger, well, I shouldn't say they saw bigger growth because some of those small towns saw absolutely, incredible increases. But I think with Auckland and Wellington in particular, prices got so high that they're not sustainable, at that rate. And so I think it's inevitable that you'd see falls there first. And I think, we get medium and average data sort of showing how things have fallen, but that doesn't obviously encapsulate the whole market. So I think you'll see bigger drops than maybe represented in the data that we see, whereas you'll also see some areas that don't drop. So
Yeah, because it is tricky, because when you look at some of the other stats out there, like the RENZ property report, sometimes it can feel a bit misleading, because if we look at
I think there is a lag there, and also, if you look at the annual figures, price growth last year for most of the year was so strong that that's still captured in those annual figures. So even though there's been a decline,
this might have
it's
missed
still
a peak. Like this here shows you since last May or June.
Yes.
But there was a bit of a increase in between.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But again, it kind of reflects a little bit about what we might feel that Auckland is potentially getting hit a little bit harder.
Yes, although, and this
maybe.
isn't reflected on this chart, but as I understand it, in areas like Lower Hutt and Upper Hutt, there are some very strong falls in houses in some of those areas, or some of the areas in those parts of the region. So I think, as you say, it's not necessarily an exact representation of what's happening in the market, but that may come through in later figures because there are some lags there in terms of data collection too.
Yeah, because it is a strange market in that we've got inflation.
Yes.
And we potentially might have a slowing economy at the same time, which I don't think anybody's experienced for a long time.
Not for a long time.
Maybe the 70s.
I don't know. Maybe not. Yeah.
So I guess that the strange thing is that there is maybe a flaw because of building costs. Because at some point the prices are so low that with inflation, the building materials and things aren't really dropping.
Yeah.
They're actually going up.
Yeah. That's true. I think that does keep a floor under the market. I mean, ASB and Westpac and various others have estimated that maybe, once adjusted for inflation, you could see a fall of about 20% from the market peak. But that's a big drop, and it's in fact, in real terms, I think it's real terms, I get confused by that terminology, but that's bigger than the GFC, but the peak that the market got to was so high that they're 45% above pre-pandemic levels anyway. So they dropped 20%, they're still up by 25%, if you see what I mean. I mean, it's a bit convoluted, but most people will have seen gains.
And again, when you look at the whole macro thing, there's inside the detail, you'll get odd things, like you did an article here on Central Hawke's Bay going up since the start of the year.
That was on a number of, I guess, areas and towns around the country, the smaller ones usually, where prices since the beginning of the year have gone up rather than down. But talking to various people who are expert of the area, I'm told that usually those smaller towns often lag the bigger areas. So you get the bigger areas being hit by market changes first, or market corrections, and that sort of ripples out to smaller areas, by way of perhaps regional centres first, then provincial towns, and some of those areas were smaller towns. So they, unfortunately, may be poised for a drop too.
And I guess when you look at Auckland, inside Auckland, it's again, these stats don't fully reflect it, but I guess if looking at these, you'd think that North Shore has been feeling it.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously that big drop there, which is 10%, that's between April and May, and it is a big drop, in prices. But then again, you could argue that maybe those prices were overinflated. Possibly they were, because you'll see that the annual drop is still, 1.9%, which is quite a difference.
Yeah.
Although it is it's a decline, but it's quite different to 10%.
Yeah, well, hey, look, thank you for that. Miriam, you didn't pick the bottom in the market yet, but maybe next time. But
Maybe. I mean, I think, again, as I say, economists are divided on how far it might fall, or in fact, they're reluctant to take a guess, so we'll stick.
Thanks for watching. Yeah.
Thank you.